Bitcoin is right now absolutely dumping to the upside big time as it has breached $60,000 for the first time in years. While the baby bears are cuddling up to their mommies, begging for forgiveness for being incorrect and calling for a $10,000 Bitcoin like little babies, the true bust hasn't even begun yet. With Bitcoin absolutely thrusting and busting like we've never seen before, seemingly every day going higher and higher, we're literally within $10,000, and we've gotten within $10,000 of a new all-time high for Bitcoin with over a month and a half left until the halving. This has quite literally never happened in the history of baby bull kind. And in fact, we're about to have our first objective, not subjective, objective point of data, point of reference to say, yes, this time actually is different. So if you understand that we're about to get pumped on big time, but also we're going to be doing some pumping, hit that like, hit that subscribe, get signed up to FMX Blow if you want to buy Bitcoin or altcoins. Without any further ado, let's absolutely take a squeak peek at what's actually happening on these charts. Absolutely bananas. Before we continue though, I do want to say rest in peace to all the bears, the people calling for 10K. They need your prayers right now, right? Because they need something. They don't have money. They don't have gains. They've just been completely dumped on. And pretty much, it's very sad for them, but it's their fault. So looking at Bitcoin on the daily chart, 3 of the largest green daily candles that we've seen since, well, if we go all the way back to October 2023, which is literally the candle that started this rally. If we get in our time machines and jump all the way back to October 23rd, Monday, October 23rd, 29,000 all the way up to about 34,000. That was the true bust. And remember, just a week prior to that, it was because of the fake news that the Bitcoin spot ETFs were going to be approved. You see this massive wick right here on October 16th. It showed everyone definitively that it was not priced in. And guys, do you remember here and going all the way back how many people were telling you the Bitcoin spot ETFs were priced in? Canada has Bitcoin spot ETFs. Why would these do anything? It's going to be just a huge sell the news event. Look at what's happened. We have to remember this because you need to understand who was correct in understanding what was going to happen in the market and who was just completely wrong. Right? It's so important because if you want to make money in this market, you absolutely need to listen and try to tune out the people that have absolutely no idea what's going on and are just basing everything on emotion. I want to jump into these charts. I actually do want to say one thing as well. This entire run, I've been hearing people say things like, aren't you scared? We've gone up too much. A million reasons. Basically, my point of saying that is there is still so much fear in this market. So much fear. I remember back in 2019 and 2020, there was not nearly as much fear as there is right now. Before we entered the last bull market, there was simply not as much fear. For some reason, maybe it's because FTX collapsed, maybe it's because of Luna, maybe it's all these things. Whatever the reason is, people are like traumatized still. Bitcoin is a couple of percent, a couple $1,000s away from its all-time highs. And there are still people out there that are just shaking in fear, thinking this is all just one giant bull trap. And that's exactly why we're going higher, right? This entire move, this entire pump, people have been saying, it's going to collapse every single time. And majority of people are just still so scared. And I personally think that's maybe like the biggest indicator. The fact that sentiment still, people are just out of their minds, still very bearish. Retail still not very involved yet. I think it's going to actually happen very fast. I think, in my opinion, I think people are going to start coming back to crypto very fast now, especially if we hit all-time highs in the next week, because it's possible. Now, I do want to jump into the charts actually, because we have breached the literal very last level of resistance, this gigantic level right here. You can see the VRVP. This is like the last chunk of volume. It was at 57,000 US dollars. And we're now above that. And you absolutely can't understate how big that is. It's absolutely massive. We literally just have a couple of weeks trading higher than we currently are. This is all of the data we have of being higher than we currently are. Meaning, for a lot of intents and purposes, we are basically at all-time highs. In terms of a lot of metrics, we pretty much are there. We're not there quite yet. except for the fact that like in 30 currencies, we are in all-time highs for Bitcoin. US dollar is one of the only currencies that Bitcoin is not at all-time highs, but there's literally like 30 different currencies where Bitcoin is at all-time highs. And that's also an important thing to watch. I've been saying this for the past couple of weeks. First, it was like 5 currencies, then 10. Now it's like over 30 currencies that Bitcoin is at an all-time high in. And soon it will be USD, clearly. I think the bears are a little bit in shock right now. I mean, look at this weekly candle. What is this? 20% so far, a 20% weekly candle. Now, keep in mind, I'm extremely bullish. You know, be aware. We could get a $5,000 dump like this, right? Ultimately, I don't think it matters at all. I think that in the next month and a half, as we lead up to the halving, I do think it is possible we get a dump, but ultimately the trend is very clear. It's up. And what one thing, again, I have so many things I want to talk about, but I keep getting distracted with things that I think are honestly more important. But one thing that I keep seeing is that another reason I believe we're going so much higher is because people are afraid to admit that this trend is different. When you're in a bear market, it's very dangerous to try to long every time we get a dump, right? Oh, this is the final dump. I'm going to long it. It's dangerous. In a bull market, it's even less forgiving. It's even more dangerous. And we have seen, if you try to long, look at this chart. If you have tried to if you've tried to short any of these pumps, right? Let's say it pumped all the way up to here and you're like, oh, this is it. It's going to keep going down. You would get decimated over time, right? Same thing here. You get decimated. Maybe if you're very quick, you're in and you're out, you can maybe make some profit, but it is so risky. And the risk to reward of doing that is so poor that anybody that understands like the basics of crypto would tell you, probably don't do that, because we're about to enter a bull market where you're going to print more money than you could ever make from shorting a bull market to begin with. So why even waste your time, add so much risk for so little reward? Why would you do it, right? So the point is here, trying to short this market at this point, you can see for the last 15 months, clearly the trend is so developed, there's no arguing whatsoever. It's not an opinion anymore. It's completely objective. Trying to short this is literally just dangerous. There is going to be a time where you can make a lot of money shorting Bitcoin. That time is not now, right? You know, you're looking at this, maybe you're like, oh, this is the final candle. Maybe we'll, this is what? Do people actually think this? I'm saying this because I know there's some people watching this video that are actually thinking that, right? I've been hearing the same thing for the past 15 months, drawing the big squigglies going down. And it turns out the big squigglies are actually just going up. The fundamentals could not be stronger. We have not even started cutting rates. The Bitcoin halving, oh my gosh, this is bullception right here. This is the perfect recipe. We're literally seeing decoupling as well. So I do want to look at the charts more, but I actually want to jump into a lot of important things. And I also want to talk about altcoins. But Bitcoin is at 60,000 US dollars, and we're not even close to a bull cycle top activity on the blockchain. If we look at this, the active address momentum posted by On-Chain College here, we're also seeing that Peter McLovin, I guess he changed his name, Peter McCormack. For example, Bitcoin just set an all-time high in Vietnamese dongs. I can't believe that's the name of the currency. But it's about 1.5 billion dongs for a Bitcoin. That's really funny. I wonder if they knew they named their currency after a dong. But anyway, gold ETFs were demolished by Bitcoin ETFs yesterday. Bitcoin inflows of over 500 million versus gold's negative 17 million outflows. Gold bugs are literally crying and squealing right now. Bitcoin ETFs outperformed all other ETFs of 2023 in just 1 month of trading. Can you believe this? As I've been saying, these Bitcoin ETFs will go down as the most successful ETFs in the history of mankind. And more evidence continues to show this. Bitcoin ETFs have taken 5 billion net in the last 13 days, about almost 400 million per day, over 6,000 Bitcoin per day, 7 times the daily Bitcoin issuance per day. Look at this. And this is just the beginning. Bitcoin ETFs had the third biggest day of inflows yesterday, taking in over 570 million. Total net inflows around almost 7 billion in 32 trading days. Guys, this is extremely, extremely mega bullish. And so we really look at this chart. Bitcoin busted all the way up to, above 60,000. Currently, if we look at this chart, we are, kind of just trading still around this range. I personally expect, it makes sense if we would get a pullback at some point. I mean, really, look at this chart. This thing absolutely broke out to completion, right? You can't really expect more in the very short term. However, it's very possible we get more. But I mainly want to spend this video talking about altcoins, actually, the rest of the video. Bitcoin is clearly in an extremely bullish trend, very big bull market. I think we're going extremely higher. Could we crash in the next 2 hours, the next hour? Absolutely. Doesn't matter at all. we would have to drop tens of thousands of dollars for this even to be considered a potentially bearish situation. So we have so much wiggle room. In fact, before alts start moving, I personally would expect that Bitcoin maybe does get a little bit of a dump. So we're seeing Ethereum continue to break out of this multi-year ascending triangle. Target is well above the previous all-time highs, around 4,000, actually almost around 5,000. If we look at the total 2 chart, you guys know, I'm sure you've seen this a lot. We've seen this. We're beginning this alt season here soon. But if we look at the entire, this is a big chart. If we look at the entire market cap, the total 3 chart, Bitcoin and ETH excluded from the crypto market, we have a ton of room ahead of us to start lifting off after kind of cementing support for weeks and weeks, right at about 475 billion. But more importantly, this chart, the ASO indicator on the total cryptocurrency market chart, which currently sits above 2 trillion US dollars, this shows us where we are in the bull market, right? Look at these 2 other times. You can see where it started and how much time. Sometime towards the about 70% in, right about here, is usually optimum time to sell. And that puts us about here in about the end of quarter 1, beginning or middle of quarter 2, 2025. We have so many gains left to go. The amount of gains we have left is honestly mesmerizing, right? So much left. We're currently at about 2 trillion US dollars in the entire cryptocurrency market. I personally think $10 trillion for the entire cryptocurrency market is an easy target. That's literally about a 5x, right? It's not that much. Absolutely mind-blowing how much I believe we have left to go. The inflows that we're seeing from Bitcoin, and this is another thing I want to talk about, is that the inflows that we're seeing from Bitcoin, everybody has been saying that, this time is different, is just fantasy, and this time will never be different. Well, I have news for you that if Bitcoin is to succeed, there will be a point where it is different. Bitcoin will start decoupling. It will stop just following the stock market like it's been doing actually for the past month and a half, really, since the ETFs kicked off. And basically it has to be different at some point. Is this the beginning of that? The beginning of hyper-Bitcoinization, the beginning of decoupling, the beginning of a super cycle where we literally just go straight up? Is it the destruction of a 4-year cycle? Because what's happening on the Bitcoin chart right now is indicative of proving a 4-year cycle wrong. We're doing things differently this time. We broke above the 0.618 way earlier than any other bull market. We're the closest that we've ever been to a new all-time high prior to a Bitcoin halving. In fact, literally just a couple thousand more dollars, less than 10% of the high that we put in, and we would be at a new all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before. So if that does happen, you would be delusional to say this time is not different. It literally, objectively is different. If something happens that has never happened before, then it's different, right? I'm trying to explain the definition of when something is different because some people, I think, will try to still make the case that this time is not different. I'm telling you, it's different already. If Bitcoin just continues performing 25% as good as it's done over the past month, this time is going to be very different, right? It's more possible, in my opinion, instead of underperforming and only going 25% is bullish, we're going to overperform and go 200% is bullish, right? Now, with all that being said, I definitely think people should be cautious a little bit. Always. We're up so much, it does not make sense to be only bullish. There will be a correction at some point. Nobody can predict exactly when. In fact, everybody that keeps trying to predict a crash gets humiliated and looks dumb because it's so hard to predict and nobody's able to do it successfully because we keep going straight up. But all I have to say is really this new dynamic of these ETFs that are just pumping liquidity, pumping interest, pumping this market does not seem to be stopping anytime soon. Okay. If this was maybe 6 months after the Bitcoin halving and the ETFs were approved after, I would start, that's not as good of a situation, but we got the ETFs before the halving. Whether Gary Gensler wanted it or not, or the people that hate Bitcoin, whether they wanted it or not, we got Bitcoin ETFs at basically the best time we could have gotten them. Do you understand that? Like, that's actually crazy. You basically couldn't have picked a better time for these ETFs to be approved. It's honestly, it's kind of shocking, right? Like a couple months before the halving, as Bitcoin put in a very nice 12-month performance all of 2023, as inflation started, the talks of rate cuts really started, the potential of quantitative easing potentially is going to start as well, as the stock market hits all-time highs. You just you can't think of a better, more bullish setup. There's no guarantee. There never is in life with anything. There's no guarantee that we're going to $300,000 per Bitcoin. But the setup right now literally could not be better. And get signed up to Femex below if you want to buy Bitcoin or altcoins. Without any further ado,